making talk difficult. The guys seemed to come as a pair because when Angie suggested to Dan that they adjourn to the garden, Ash followed on, leading me with him. My ears were ringing when we stepped onto the lawn out back. There were dozens of people scattered across the grass, reclining and enjoying the warm evening air. Some were already enjoying each other, having fun kissing or fondling each other. Others had slipped hands underneath clothing, and in the distance, passionate cries of, "Yes, yes," could be heard. A peculiar thrill warmed my tummy at the sound. I'd always been a bit of a voyeur, and knowing a couple were fucking nearby intrigued me. I wanted to find them. I wanted to spy on them and enjoy the sounds of their passion.
Wait, am I tanking the whole thing?
Here. Huh? I asked. Ash was grinning at me. His gentle fingertips stroked errant hair from my eyebrow. Earth to Barbie. I sighed. It's not Barbie, it's Barb. I curled my fingers and made claws. As in barbed wire. Angie had introduced me as Barbie, as she always did. And I usually spent several hours trying to search the name from whoever I was talking to. Okay, so I was slender and had long blonde hair, but I wasn't a plastic toy to be dressed and undressed. Well, maybe I'd make an exception for Ash tonight. Yeah, sure, sorry, Barb. It's okay. I leaned my shoulder against his and put too much effort into my laugh, making me sound delirious. My forced laugh set off his laugh, and we giggled like teenagers for a whole minute. Angie broke her lingering kiss with Dan to glance over at me. What's so funny? Life, I replied, and laughed again. Angie grinned and went back to kissing Dan. I watched, happy she'd found a guy. Ash didn't seem to be in a rush to lock lips with me, and I was grateful he was giving me some space, although his arm had found my waist as we'd laughed. I didn't mind. I was enjoying his company. Wiping the tears from my eyes, I listened to the rhythmic cries of the woman being fucked in the distance. My mind filled with the possible positions she might be in, being taken from behind on the grass, or in a summer house. Maybe he was on top of her, buried inside her body with her legs wrapped around his waist. Oh, to be in her position right now. You sound happy, Ash said. I realized I'd let out a long, contented sigh. I am, I nodded over eagerly. Damn, I was drunk. Well, why the hell not? It was the weekend, and weekends were made for partying. Ash hugged my waist and glanced at his friend, who was eagerly kissing my friend. His arms were on her back, pulling her against him. She was cupping the back of his head, kissing him hungrily. He knew he was going to get lucky tonight. Ash, I imagined, wasn't as certain. Sure, I was horny, and the cries from the other couple were turning me on, but I still wasn't ready to throw myself at him. Feeling slightly guilty for not being in the mood to deliver, I snuggled up to him, slipping my arm around his waist. His clasp on my waist tightened immediately. I listened to the contented noises Angie and Dan were making. I wondered how long it would be before they needed to get each other's clothes off. It wasn't long. Dan whispered something to her, and she giggled. He stood up and hurried off. Have you upset him? I asked. No, she said, straightening her t-shirt. I hadn't noticed Dan slipping his hands up there. He'd probably touched her in other places too, judging by the way she squirmed her butt against the grass. He's probably gone for more drinks, Ash said, indicating Angie's empty glass. He was wrong. Angie's hissed name drifted across to us. The three of us turned to see Dan leaning out an upstairs window.
I don't need these soul shields.
Quick, what's he doing? I asked as she rose to her feet.
3 and 4.
Found us.
I've already got my 3 and 4.
An empty room. She extended her hand to me. I frowned at it, puzzled. When I didn't take it, she looked pained. She bounced her knees. Please come with me. What? I gaped at her. No, you guys go and have fun. Please. I don't know him too well. I'm a little scared. Maybe you should have thought about that before you started sucking off his face. How did you think this was going to end? Ash sighed. Maybe you should go with her, to keep her safe.
You have made
Safe?
a bid in the
Is
auction.
Dan dangerous?
A higher
Ash
bid
laughed.
has been made.
No,
You
he
have
can be
made
a
a
little
bid in
rough
the
with
auction.
girls, but
A
he'd never
higher
hurt
bid has
anyone.
been made.
Just go with her. She'll feel safer if you're there. I
You have
frowned
made
at
a
him.
bid in the
Are you
auction. A higher
crazy?
bid has been made.
Stand and watch the pair of them shaking the sheets? No. Ash could come too, Angie suggested. Then you guys could have fun at the same time. I could do that, Ash said, if you want me to. So, let's get this straight. You want the two of us, I indicated me and Ash, to sit beside you while you do the nasty? Please? She tried to cross her ankles, but ended up staggering and almost falling to the grass. She's a little drunk, Ash pointed out. She's a lot drunk. I rolled my eyes. I couldn't let my best friend go to bed drunk with a guy who was a little rough with his conquests. And Angie wasn't ready to go on her own. Plus, she would never forgive me if I stopped her getting her jollies off tonight.
What are these relic pieces good for
All right.
anyway?
I raised my hands. I'll come along, but only to make sure you're safe. I frowned at her. This ugly little slut. She grinned and threw her arms around me. Thank
How many
you.
of them do you
You're
need?
my bestest friend ever. Yeah.
Shit.
I stood up and Ash followed, taking hold of my hand. Let's go and get you laid. Dan threw his arms around Angie the moment we were in the bedroom.
Yep.
He didn't seem troubled that she'd brought along an escort. The pair kissed eagerly and Angie pressed herself against him in a full body hug. When his hand slid down her back to squeeze her butt, I rolled my eyes and turned away. I'd seen enough. Ash grinned at me and offered his hand. When I took it, he led me round to the far side of the bed, away from the action. His hands rose to my face and he leaned in to kiss me. The idea of backing off crossed my mind, but then I thought, why not? He was a gentle, nice-looking guy, with truckloads more patient than his rough friend. It could be fun. His lips touched mine, hesitantly at first, but when I leaned in to kiss him back, his kiss became firmer. His lips were nice and soft, and he'd shaved recently, so there was no stubble burn. I hated Pash Rash with
No! Fucking game. No!
his
Fucking.
hands slid around my waist, comforting me, but not forcing me against his body, which was a good thing. He probably had an erection by now, and I wasn't ready to have it imposed upon me. Not so much my friend. Cracking open an eye, I saw her hand grasping at Dan's crotch. From the look of things, he was properly hard for her. He had his hands underneath her t-shirt, rubbing her boobs through her bra. It wouldn't be long before their clothes began to come off. I broke Ash's gentle kiss. Can we sit down? I asked. I would feel more comfortable on the bed where I could close my eyes and not worry about falling over. I didn't want to be watching my oversexed friend when she started getting naked. Sure, I'd seen her in her underwear and fresh out of the shower with a towel around her, but watching her have sex, I wasn't sure I was ready to witness that. Although, my mind drifted back to the passionate cries from the garden and how I found it sexy. I wouldn't even have to imagine my friend having sex. She'd be right here beside me. Holy shit. I sat on the edge of the mattress. He sat beside me and we resumed our kiss, slipping our arms around each other. Unlike Angie and Dan, our kiss was a tender, first-time experience. I was nowhere near ready to undress for him. He seemed patient enough to accept that. Behind us, Angie was breathing heavily, groaning as Dan did whatever he was doing to her. I risked a peek and saw she no longer wore a t-shirt or a bra. Dan was sucking on her breast, swirling his tongue around her areola. He was kneading her roughly, as if her breasts were bread dough. I shuddered and turned back to my gentle kiss with Ash. His hands were rubbing my back, sending warmth through my body. Being in this room with him was nice.
Motherfucker.
Far better than the messy orgy I'd
Had bad luck with this today.
Oh, fuck. Angie groaned. The mattress shifted beneath me, and I wondered what they were doing now. I peeked again to see Dan dragging Angie's legs toward him. A moment later, his head was underneath her short skirt, buried in
The
her
next
crotch.
auction will start.
Warmth flooded through me at the thought of his tongue exploring her pussy. Suddenly, kissing Ash nicely seemed childish and tame. I felt as if I was being left behind, and her lover was. Hell, he was pushing up her skirt, giving us all a clear view of her trim pubes.
Another party member.
I turned back to Ash and saw he was also watching the action. He smiled, embarrassed at having been caught, but I took his face in my hands and kissed him hungrily. I turned back to Ash and saw he was also watching the action. He smiled, embarrassed at having been
Another
caught,
party member has won
but I took his face in my hands and kissed him hungrily. That is so hot, I said after a moment. He's always been a fast worker, Ash said. I couldn't tell if he was jealous, but I was definitely beginning to feel like a nun in a whorehouse. Angie was groaning, breathing
Probably.
heavily and muttering encouragement to Dan as he used his tongue on her. Let's do some catching up, I said. I unbuttoned my blouse, but before I
I'll probably
could
just
answer,
try and keep hugging Naryu.
you don't have to hurry this because of me, he said. I'm
Why?
loving kissing you. Then you'll enjoy kissing these. I drew my blouse open, exposing my bra. He sighed
Sunday's the big-
to kiss my boobs.
All the Iron Wand shit.
He was doing such a good job. I unhooked my bra so he could reach my nipples, which were already pebbled and hard. His hands slid across them, squeezing gently and rubbing his thumbs across my nipples. I groaned and cupped the back of his head, encouraging him to use his tongue on me. Behind us,
Why are you doing so much lap?
over and over, begging Dan.
To get the rest of my soul shield.
What? I glanced across and saw Dan pushing his fingers into her.
Good luck.
Oh, she meant finger cup. I could feel myself growing hotter as I listened to her cries. As
I've only
Ash
seen
sucked on
1
my
8 in
nipples,
like the
I peeked
10
back
lab
at my
runs
friend.
I've done.
Dan winked at me from between her legs as he flicked her clit with the tip of his tongue.
8.
I don't have enough crit though,
Kissing her breasts roughly.
so I need these with a crit.
Into the soft
It went for
flesh,
like almost
pushing her
30
nipples
gold,
between her
too.
fingers and thumbs. It was amazing.
That's too much.
I'd never been
I was
so
like,
close to
yeah.
two
I just sat back. I was like, I don't
before.
fucking need it.
And
At
something
when it
that
went to
was
like
so
1.5
different
gold, I was
to
like,
I'd
no.
never considered myself to be a
It was
voyeur,
like 2,
but watching Dan
5,
eating out my
8,
friend was
10. I was
seriously
like,
a
oh
ride.
yes, money.
It was like a porn. I could reach out and touch if I wanted to.
I don't think it was quite
And
30.
I
I think it was like
wanted to.
27
My fingers
something.
found Angie's hand
Still-
still groping her breasts.
Right? It's
Immediately,
way too
she
much.
gripped my hand and held on tight.
Whatever,
Her
I got
hand
like
was
6
hot,
gold. I
and I
made
wasn't surprised.
like
I would
19
be
gold
hot
that
if a
run.
guy
I
was
was like,
licking my pussy.
sweet.
Damn.
I glanced down at Ash, who was enjoying my breast, circling
Like
my
one of the
nipples with
ornament
his
things
tongue.
dropped, and then
Oddly,
one of the
I didn't feel embarrassed
bundles
being
of
topless
the
in front of
30
the others. It would be silly, I
the
suppose.
green things.
They
whatever
weren't
it is,
even
the
looking
relics.
at me. Plus, they were only 1 or 2 steps from fucking each other. Fuck, Angie cried.
That stupidly went
crushing
for
my
like
hand.
5 gold.
Her
I was
body
like, what
arched,
are you doing?
lifting her
That's way
back
more than
clear
they're
of the
worth.
bed. Her hips rocked back and forth, almost throwing Dan off her pussy. Fuck, yes. Fuck, She tried to muffle her
it's just
cries
more
by
of a
pressing her lips
convenience
together.
thing.
Her breath hissed in and out of her nose. Her other hand crushed her breast, digging her nails into the soft skin. That was going to leave a mark, I was sure. 5 marks, red ones. I compared that to the gentle way Ash was kissing my other breast, sucking on the nipple and flicking
Yeah.
it with his tongue.
Protect.
I cupped it for him, enjoying the feel of my fingers against my skin.
Oh, Iczel. I think the
Rising from between
sparkling
Angie's legs.
pentagonal
Her eyes were still
or
closed as he stripped off his
hexagonal
clothes,
pouches
hurling them
come with the new
carelessly
update.
aside. When he pushed down his pants, his erection sprang free, hard and ready for action. Without asking
I
for
think
permission,
craft.
he lowered himself onto her and reached down,
I think
guiding
we get
himself into
the
her.
next level of stuff,
No,
don't we?
she cried. But I need you, he protested.
Yeah, that's what I mean. When the
Pussy
fucking
with-
Silver Frost Mountain is
Not
over,
bareback,
yeah,
she said, a note of panic in her voice. Never bareback.
Please try
All right. He seemed relieved. I need a condom. Damn right you do. She fumbled for her clutch bag, which was lying on the floor near the bed. I'm here. She glanced at me. I brought some spares.
To target.
Dan didn't waste much time tearing open the packet and covering himself. Angie smiled as he lowered his body into hers. Thank you. She cupped his face to kiss him as he guided his pocket to her mouth. Her mouth fell open as he filled her with his hard flesh, sliding all the way in without pause. That's what I needed, she murmured. Me too, baby, he said, pressing his cheeks against hers. His buttocks rose and fell as he began thrusting. Her hand stroked his back absently. But considering how loud she'd been when he licked her out, she was making very little noise now that Dan was fucking her. You like that, baby? You like it inside you? It's nice. I turned my attention back to Ash, who was still kissing my boobs. But his hands were exploring my thighs, rubbing and squeezing them. He couldn't reach my butt because I was sitting on it, but I was
That's
sure
good.
he'd have been squeezing my cheeks otherwise. I decided I was ready for him to go a step further. Let me stand up, I said. He moved back and watched as I pulled.
You're listening to it right now.
Listen to Dirty Book.
Went straight to my crotch and the red lacy panties I wore. Rather than sit down, I stepped up to him, playfully
Fucking
pulling the
Iczel
panties
playing
away from my
one-handed.
body and sliding them from side to side. I sighed as he pressed his lips to my crotch. His fingers curled around the elastic hem, then pulled gently, bearing my more than ready pussy to his gaze. When the panties fell to my ankles, I stepped out of them and left my feet apart. His fingers found my wet lips, slipping between them to explore my slippery flesh beneath.
Let's see if I can get in
groaned as
on
he
black.
teased my eager opening with his fingertips, stroking my clit with
Should
his
be the
thumb at
weekend
the same
boxes, right?
time. This boy knew what he was doing. But my pussy was aching for something more, something inside me. I shuffled my feet a little further apart so he could explore me properly, cupping my breast as Angie had done. I let my thumb stroke my nipples as Ash leaned in to use his tongue on me. I waited for Ash's fingers to slip inside me and fill me, to rub my pussy walls. No, no, no,
A loot action
Dan
has
groaned.
started.
I ignored him, concentrating on the wonderful feeling of Ash's tongue between my lips. I groaned as the tip teased my clit, circling it, before he flicked it playfully. But his fingers,
Yeah,
I
don't
needed
need
his
that.
fingers in me.
Another party member has
Fucking
won the bid.
bitch,
You have
Dan
withdrawn
spat.
from the auction.
What was eating him?
I need one.
I opened my eyes to see him shaking Angie. He
I
tapped
still
his
need
hand
2
against her
from
cheek.
Bloodshed.
She seemed
4,
relaxed
no,
and
I have 4.
contented, apart from Dan lightly slapping her.
You defeated Fujin's
She looked happy, with a small smile on her face.
I need 1, 7, and 8.
She looked
Next
asleep.
auction will start.
Come on, Dan begged, but Angie was out for the count. Her chest rose and fell gently. She was okay, but the alcohol she consumed, plus her last orgasm, must have conspired against her. Frustrated,
Another
Dan
party
thrust
member
into
has
her
won
for
the
10
bid.
seconds,
The
but
next
finding her
auction is in the
unresponsive,
auction.
pulled out and leaned back against the headboard. His sheathed cock began to wilt immediately. Fucking
A
hell,
higher
he
bid
groaned.
has been made.
But Ash's fingers were distracting me. He was stroking
made
the
a
entrance
bid
to
in the
my
auction.
pussy. His tongue was still teasing my clit. My crotch was growing hot with
A
excitement.
higher bid
Wet
has been
clicking
made.
sounds accompanied the movements of his tongue. Any second now, he might
You
slip
have
them
another
inside
party
me.
member has won the bid.
I groaned
The
as
next
tension
auction
built
will
in my
start.
crotch.
You have made a bid in the auction.
Tiny spasms
A
became
higher
bigger
bid has been
ones.
made.
My
You
muscles
have
were
made a bid in
tightening,
the auction.
heating up with
A
every
higher
touch of
bid
his
has
tongue
been
and
made. You have
fingers.
withdrawn from the
Oh,
auction.
fuck, I groaned. Something squeezed my body like a vice. I cried out as my chest tightened.
Another
My
party
pussy
member
pulsed,
has won the bid.
spazzing
The
over
next
and
auction
over.
will start.
My pelvic tightened and my hips bucked. The orgasm hit me like a wave, and
You
I
have made
felt
a
my
bid in the
knees
auction.
soften.
A higher
I
bid
pressed my
has been
hands to
made.
the top of Ash's head to steady myself
You
as
have
my
made a
body
bid in
shook
the
and
auction.
tightened,
Bid has been made.
released and tightened.
You have made a bid.
Holy
in the
fuck.
auction.
Oh, so let him have it.
My hips bucked several
What
more
do you need it
times
for?
as deep muscle spasms shook my body.
You have
I
made a bid in
gasped
the
out my
auction.
ecstasy at the sudden high which was flooding my
A higher
body,
bid has
then
been
sank
Oh, did it?
slowly to the
You
bed.
have withdrawn from
My
the
legs
auction.
felt like jelly and refused to support me anymore. As I tried to get my breathing under control, Ash
Another
rose
party
to his
member
feet
has
and
won the
began
bid.
to undress.
The next auction
I let
bid
my
in the
eyes
auction.
close, half listening
Sorry,
to the
fucking
rustle
playing
of
the
his
bench
clothing.
capitalist again on my phone.
Would you use your mouth on me, please?
A higher
I
bid
opened my
has been
eyes to see
made.
him standing naked. His erect cock was only inches
Oh, yeah.
away, the exposed head shining with stickiness. I glanced up at
It was
him
already
a moment.
unlocked when I updated
He
it.
moved closer. I reached up and curled my fingers around his shaft, then opened my mouth. His cock was hot in my hand, and the head was slippery against my tongue. He groaned as I licked the underside of his head, spreading his wetness around. I pressed my lips to his shaft, and after swirling saliva across his skin, took
You
him
have made a
further
bid in
into
the
my
auction.
mouth. That's perfect. Lucky fucking you, Dan muttered behind me. I ignored him and began
You have
sliding
won the
up
bid.
and down Ash's
All
cock.
auctions have ended.
I hoped I wouldn't have to do it for very long, because my pussy was aching for attention. Thoughts of how Ash's cock would feel inside me began to fill my mind. I imagined lying on my back, with my heels pressing into his cheeks as he slid deep into me. His cock filling my pussy became the only thing I could think about. I pulled back, drawing breath to ask him to make love to me, but he cupped the back of my head and pulled me back onto him. Okay then, maybe in a few minutes. I love what you're doing to me. Please don't stop. Want to lie down? That way, we'd both be more comfortable. Sure. He kicked his clothes aside and laid on the bed beside me. I shuffled down until my head was resting on his hip, then guided his cock back into my mouth. It tasted much better the second time round. He slid his fingers through my hair as I sucked on him, murmuring approval of my technique. A hand stroked my buttock, squeezing it firmly, and lifting it